Very good evening to you all, and I want to welcome you to what is the very first webinar brought to you by the advisory service in Roscommon Longford. This evening on this beef webinar, we will have a number of speakers. I will be the host, and Seán Doorley is my name. I'm Dry Stock Advisor based in the Teagasc office in Longford. We are covering three topics this evening. First of all, we have James Kelly covering the topic of beam, and secondly we have Shane Devaney, who is covering parasites in cattle over the winter period, and thirdly myself, I will be covering the rollover of various Department of Agriculture schemes, and this was a new addition to our agenda for this webinar, as we've had a lot of information over the last week on the rollover of these schemes. Just want to remind you all that this is being recorded. We have a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens there if you want to type in questions. You'll only be able to see your own question that you've typed in. We will address all these questions at the end of the three presentations. So if you think of a question, just type it in and we'll get to it. We also have Donal McCabe, Dry Stock Advisor Longford, here in the background to help us out on the webinar. Just want to remind you, if you are on a phone, just make sure your phone, that the battery is powered up. And so look at, without further ado, we'll move to our first speaker, and I'll just introduce you to James Kelly, Dry Stock Advisor in the Roscommon office.
Thanks very much, Seán. So tonight I'd like to welcome everybody on this webinar. We're going to cover the BEAM, the Beef Exceptional Aid Measure Scheme. I'm going to go through a background introduction to the scheme. We're going to do a few examples on it, and after the presentation we can take questions on the examples. So I'll just bring up the presentation here now.
Yeah.
Okay, are we okay there?
On full screen, yeah, you have it.
Yeah, well, so to begin again, we're just going to cover the BEAM here, the Beef Exceptional Aid Measure Scheme. The background to the scheme was introduced in August, September 2019. That's when you made your application for the scheme. The scheme was brought in due to falling beef prices. It was brought in as compensation for falling beef prices. It was based on a payment of €100 per animal slaughtered during a reference period, and the rate was €100 per animal slaughtered during a reference period and €40 per suckler cow. The max amount of animals to be slaughtered was 100. The max amount of suckler cows permitted was 40. So the max payment for beef finishers was €10,000, and the max payment for suckler farmers was €1,600. Payment was made in December 2019. This payment, though, came with a major condition. This is the major condition of the scheme. It's a 5% reduction in cattle numbers between a reference period of July 2018 to 2019 relative to this year. So your reference period was the 1st of July 2018 to the 30th of June 2019. That's the reference period. So you have to come down 5% on your stocking numbers between the 1st of July 2020 and the 30th of June 2021. This will become clear on the examples further on. As I say, it is not a calendar year, it's 2 half years, so we need to be mindful of that. So where do you get your figures? The source of your figures here are Ag Food individual login. That will show you the organic nitrates figures on your farm. Your Teagasc advisor, private consultant, or the ICBF, you will get your figures on. So finding your figures. Once you find your reference bovine nitrate figure, this is the amount of organic nitrogen that the animals produced on your farm between the 1st of July 2018 and the 30th of June 2019. So that is the reference figure. You have to come down 5% on that in this period that has just passed July just passed to June next year. So there's a reference period and there's a target period, and you have to come down 5% on the reference period. So the origin of these figures, how is organic nitrogen calculated on a farm? A suckler cow produces 65 kilos of nitrogen per year, a 0 to 1 year old 24 kilos of in per year, a 1 to 2 year old 57 kilos of in, and an over 2 year old 65 kilos of nitrogen per year. But the important thing here is it's calculated on every farm in the country on a daily basis. So the cattle you have on your farm on a daily basis, that's how your organic nitrogen is calculated. That's a very important figure. That's a very important point here for people who are trading a lot of cattle, moving in cattle at different times during the month and selling cattle in the middle of the month. We'll come on to that later on. But the figures are got off the Department of Agriculture's AIMS system, where it calculates the amount of animals on your farm on a daily basis. That's how your reference figures are got. So how do we go about achieving this 5% cut? The first question we have to ask ourselves is, where am I today with my figures? Am I above the 5%? Am I below it? Am I on target? We need to go on tag food. We need to find out where we are today. The next question I'm going to ask myself is, where do I need to be on the 30th of June next year? What is my target figure? What have I to get down to? And the third question there is, how will I get there? So the tool we're using for compliance at Teagasc is the Teagasc Beam Calculator. You can see there on the presentation, you can see on the side, we have suckler cows, cattle 0 to 1 year old, cattle 1 to 2 year old, cattle over 2 year old. And if you see there, we start off in July 2020, and we go the whole way across to June 2021. So basically this calculator will allow you to see where you are at the moment, and it will allow you to project numbers forward to come in under the scheme. An important point to make here is, to make this 5% cut, you cannot you have to come down in numbers. You cannot export slurry, or you cannot take in additional land on your BPS application. It's based on numbers. The numbers must come down. Exporting slurry is no good. Some people are of the opinion that exporting slurry at the end of this year may achieve a cut. It doesn't. It has to be done based on the numbers. So the first example I have here is a mixed dry stock farmer in Roscommon. Real life example. He has a beam payment of €1,800. He runs a calf to beef system, buying in 40 calves, selling out 40 beef cattle. And at the minute, he's actively using the beam calculator to comply with the 5% cut in his stocking numbers. So to look at this here, to look at this and take a little bit of time on this calculator, it's a 40 head turnover. We can see the reference values there. That he got them three reference values: 4,197, 3,987, and the 210 kilos that he must come down. So he got those figures off of Ag Food. So we will get them off of Ag Food. What I'm after putting in there in the green bubble is 1,105 kilos of nitrogen. That's what he has produced on his farm so far between July and October. So the beam year, the important beam year, is starting on the 1st of July, just gone by, and is ending on the 30th of June next year. So at the end of this month, we'll have half of the beam period gone. That green bubble there shows the nitrogen produced on his farm for the first 4 months, which is 1,105 kilos. What I'm after highlighting there in black is his current numbers. That figure in the green as well, that's got off Ag Food. November, December there, we're highlighting the current animals he has on his farm. So at the minute, he has 40 weanlings, 0 to 1 year old, and he has 41 1 to 2 year old store cattle. So we can project them forward with a relative degree of accuracy. So we have November, December. The next black box I have highlighted there is the next time this farm is going to change in numbers. This farmer is doing calf to beef system. He has a 40 head turnover. He's buying in 20 calves in February, 20 calves in March. So we can see there on the bottom line, he's going from 74 calves, if you see, to 94 to 114. So in that February-March period, his total heads are going up by 40. But also we must remember that the cattle that he had, that he reared as calves last year, go instead of them being 0 to 1 year olds, they also go up in age category. So there's a lot of changes on this particular system in the month of February and March. There's animals coming in and there's animals getting older. The older the animals get, obviously the more organic in they're going to produce. So his numbers has gone from 74 to 114. Traditionally, this farmer starts to sell cattle in June. He normally sells around 10 bullocks in June. He'll be selling them in July, August. They'll be sold at around 27, 30 months. That's what they are sold as. So traditionally, he'd have 34 of them there, we see. He'd be selling 10 of them, coming back down to 24. Now, what has happened here on this farm is, if he carries on with his traditional system of killing off grass in the summer and starting to kill in June, only killing 10, he's only going to achieve a 4.5% cut, as you have seen circled in red there. It's not going to be minus 5%. So this farmer, this calculator has showed this farmer that he's not going to achieve the 5% cut based on his system. So this is a real life farm. The farm is in Roscommon. We done these figures earlier in the year. We can see now he's not going to achieve it. So to move on here again, I put in the green bubble there again. That's what he produced in the first 4 months. The first black box, his cattle in November, December, then the projections for February and March. The action here that we have recommended is the sale of 20 bullocks instead of 10 in June. So if this farmer goes from 34 to 14, now on the original example, he went from 34 to 24. So if he sells 20 cattle at the start of June, he's going to come in at 5.8%. He's going to achieve the 5% cut. Now, the beauty of this calculator is it is going to give the farmer time to make that cut. Like he's not just going to be able to go out and bring 10 animals to the factory at the drop of a hat. He's going to need time to pick them out, to feed them, get them ready, etc. So now he knows in December that he has to have 20 bullocks gone at the start of June instead of 10. So he can start feeding them a little bit extra. He can start projecting a little bit forward, and he knows where he is. If he sticks with this calculator, he's going to achieve the 5%. I can come back to that example anyway afterwards. So what were the issues for this farmer? He wasn't achieving the 5% reduction where he was. He had to change the farming system slightly, and a plan was put in place. So the first calculator the first page showed us there that he wasn't achieving it. The second page showed us how the calculator allowed him to achieve it. The plan is in place with cattle numbers, but he must monitor it monthly. The second example here is a 20 cow suckler herd. Quite typical as to what's in Roscommon. It's a beef and a sheep farm. 20 cow suckler herd. Some of the animals are sold as weanlings, but mostly are sold as 1.5 olds, some slaughtered as well. He had a beam payment there of €1,500, this farmer had. So again, we get his figures off of Ag Food. This is this farmer's figures. We have his reference figure. That's what he produced in the original period between the 1st of July 18 and the 30th of June 19. That's what he produced. That's his reference period. The 126 is the 5% reduction he must achieve. We have his limit of organic in for the year. We have what he produced from July to October here, 938, and November to June. I suppose the key figure on that there is the 5% reduction. That's 126 kilos. He must get his organic in produced on the farm down by that. So again, Farmer B here, we're calling him. This is his normal trading system. The first 4 months there, he's produced 938 kilos. If you see there, November 20, December 20, January, February, March, we've projected his number out there. He has 20 suckler cows. He has one to go here in December. We've projected them out. He'll be calving 19. We've projected the 0 to 1 year olds out, the 1 to 2 year olds out. So this is the figures that he planned to keep. When all that was done, he thought he was on it. He thought he was well under it, but he actually wasn't. He only has a cut of 4.8% done. He's not achieving the 5% cut. So the first thing the beam calculator has showed this farmer is if he stays going with his normal system as he normally does, much like the calf to beef example, he's not going to achieve the cut. So what does he do? We have him here selling 2 stores in January. So if he goes from 4 stores there, if you see where the arrow is, there's a 4 there and a 2. If he sells 2 store cattle at the start of January 2021, which he's happy enough to do, cattle 1 to 2 year olds, this will then bring him down to actually a 7% drop in stocking numbers. Now, while this seems a very small cut, the thing about that is he has it achieved so early. Them 2 cattle are gone off the farm for the months of January, February, March, April, etc. The 2 cattle are gone off the farm for a full 6 months. Now, if he didn't do that there, he would have to cut a lot more out here in April, May, June. If this farmer doesn't get the calculator done now and doesn't recognize the cut that needs to be made now, the small cut, the relatively small cut in this case, if he doesn't realize that now, he's going to have to cut more cattle out here in April, May, June, and it's going to have more of an effect on his system. So the key point there on that slide is he took remedial action in time to achieve the 5% cut, and actually he went over it at 7%. So the take-home messages are: review your numbers today. You need to go on Tag Food, go on to your Teagasc Advisor, private consultant. You need to get your figures for the reference period, and you need to get how much you need to cut down by. You also need to find out what you have produced so far. Today is the 16th of December. We're halfway through December. We're literally halfway through the beam year. At the end of this month, half the year is gone. So a farmer needs to know where he is now at the minute to review his numbers today. Second point I have there is small actions now will avoid bigger actions in April, May, June. We've seen that there, especially with the second example. By doing the cuts now in January, he avoided a lot in April, May, June. Help is available through Teagasc Consultants, ICBF Ag Food. And as I say, we can take questions afterwards on the 2 examples or any questions you might have there yourself. But the main thing that we want to get through on this webinar is we need farmers to do the beam calculator now. Find out exactly where you are now, then the beam calculator can be modified and we can see what a farmer has to do. But it really has to be put onto the system. Awareness has to be created as to where you are, and thereafter take remedial action. So thanks very much there, Seán.
Thank you very much there, James, for that. And as James says, if you do have any questions, keep them coming in there on the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens. So next up, we have Shane Devaney, and I'll just ask Shane to start his video there. Yeah.
Okay, just let me share my screen. How's that?
Great.
Good to go?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Look, I'm going to cover parasite control at housing. My name is Shane Devaney. I'm based here in the Teagasc office in Longford. Look, I suppose a lot of information I'm going to go through here this evening with you would be information that I would have sourced from Animal Health Ireland and also from local veterinary advice. It's basically a refresher for what you're at already, just the products you're using and when is the best time to come in and use these products. So first thing to go through here is, I suppose, why is dosing so important at housing? Look, we know that animals, if you don't treat them at housing time, they'll carry this source of infection over the winter time and they'll bring it onto the pasture the next year, re-infecting that pasture, which causes you problems during that summer. Also, you want your animals to do good thrive in the house. So look, it's an expensive time feeding cattle over the winter period of the year. So you want to have all of the parasites cleaned out so you get the best thrive possible from the animals. Sometimes you have to decide, do you want to do those pre-housing or those post-housing? And we'll just come back to that in a further slide, why you would do that. So at this time of the year, so what are you trying to control? You're trying to control, I suppose, your lungworms is a must, your stomach worms, liver fluke, depending if fluke is an issue on your land, and your ruminant fluke, which might be less of a problem, but it has become more of an issue over the last number of years. And the last one, which needs to be controlled at housing, is your external parasites, which is your lice and your mange. Start with your lungworm. There's a 4-week life cycle for the lungworm. It's seen as more of a problem in the second half of the year, more so than the first half of the year, as the levels build up. Look, it takes around 2 years of a grazing season to develop immunity to lungworm. The animal has to come in contact with a certain amount of the disease to build up the immunity. Pre-housing, dose with an ivermectin. Why would you do this? I suppose you want to get your lungs, you have them well cleaned out and well healed going into the house. Ivermectin can be a good product to use at this time because there's a persistence with ivermectin, which if you treat them 2 to 3 weeks before housing, usually they're covered once they go into the shed and they don't need to be treated again. When animal has been housed and coming off a grass-based system, there is, I suppose, it's a stressful time, and also could be a time when you're weaning the calf from the cow. So you want as little stress as possible on the lungs. So it can be good to have a clean out a couple of weeks in advance, so the animal has good healthy lungs when going into the shed. Moving on. Stomach worms, look, again, you got, I suppose, around housing, it's very important to know the product you're going to use. Your stomach worms, look, there's 20 known stomach worms out there, gut worms. The 2 most important ones really to look at is your Cuperia and your Osteotegii. When it comes to your Osteotegii, you can get a reinfection later in the springtime of the year with Osteotegii type 2. If you're not using the correct product. Now, your levamisole or your yellow drench will not cover your Osteotegii type 2, and some of your white drenches won't be effective against that either. So you need to check the product to see what it covers beforehand. What happens with Osteotegii, if they're not treated at this time, they can hibernate for the winter and reappear the following spring, which can have a big effect on animal thrive. Look, from talking to vets, they would recommend using an ivermectin product at housing, as it covers all your stomach worms, and as mentioned, it also would cover your lungworms as well. So an ivermectin would be a good product to come in at this time of the year. In relation to stomach worms and resistance, I suppose resistance is a word that's been used more and more the last few years, especially with I suppose with sheep, and the use of some of the fluke doses and the worm doses is now becoming a bit of a problem in cattle as well. There was research done by Dr. Orla Keane in the Grange Research Centre, Teagasc, and she did research back a couple of years ago, without on dairy calf to beef farms, and the assess the different products, the yellow drenches, your white drenches, and your ivermectins to see what level of resistance there was out there. Now, they found with your ivermectins, there was up to 100% resistance of some sort or another. So 17 out of 17 farms showed some level of resistance. Your white drenches, there was a high level in that, up to 71%, not as high as ivermectins. And then the best of them all for, I suppose, low levels of resistance was your yellow drenches, your levamisols. Still, there was a touch of resistance there. 3 out of the 12 farms showed resistance. So it is something to be conscious of. And I suppose, why is this becoming more of an issue on farms? So I suppose if you suspect that you have a resistance problem in your own farm, a good test to do, which I would have done with my own discussion groups a couple of years ago, is you do a fecal egg sample pre-dosing and you do it post-dosing. And if you don't get a kill of greater than 95% of the egg burden in that animal, then you have some sort of a resistance problem on your farm. Causes of resistance, look, one of the main ones been mentioned is underdosing. So if you're dosing or treating a similar group of animals, what I would recommend is use a dose rate to be based on the heaviest animal in that group, and that volume of dose should be given to all the other animals. Another thing that's been recommended is to introduce the animals, especially in the grazing season, reintroduce them to the infected pasture which it came off after dosing. This would have gone against advice given, I suppose, in previous years, where they would say put them out onto the clean pasture. So they've changed their thinking on this, because where you introduced them onto the infected pastures already, it has a dilution effect on any of them resistant worms. It can sort of dilute them down, so it has to reduce the resistance levels on the farm. Again, another important one is your the dosing gun or whatever you're using to dose your animal with or treat your animal with. Make sure it is properly calibrated, that is given the correct volume of dose that is required. And I suppose a simple one, but maybe sometimes we forget to do it, is make sure the dose is properly stored and given a good shake beforehand or while dosing the animals. Again, going on veterinary advice, look, what they would say, change your class of product used each year. I suppose an example there would be use your yellow drench this year, use your white drench next year, and your third year come in with your ivermectins. And this can help to reduce resistance build up on the farm. But even with that advice, it would always be recommended to use an ivermectin at housing to make sure you cover all of the stomach worms and your lungworm. And if you treat them in housing, there won't be a problem with using this product every year at housing time, because they're not going back out on grass or on pastures and reinfecting them pastures. So it's okay to use them every year at housing time. There's no issue with resistance. Next topic I'm going to go on to is liver fluke. Look, even on dry farms, liver fluke is starting to show up. But the further west you go, you get a higher prevalence of liver fluke, mainly due to wetter climate and heavier soil types. Most people look at who are treating for liver fluke would have a farm history where fluke has been a problem on the farm. Now, for anyone that's killing livestock in the factories now send back a health check report, and it gives you, I suppose, a score on the damage done to the livers, showing you if there is a liver fluke problem on the farm, or more importantly, if the product you're using, is there a resistance building up that product, or is it working properly? When it comes to your liver fluke, there is 3 stages in the life cycle. It takes about 12 weeks for the full life cycle to occur with your liver fluke before it becomes an adult. You got your early immature, your immature, and your adult. So I suppose it's very important to know, get the timing right of when to go in, and know that the product you're using is going to cover the fluke at that particular stage. There's no immunity to liver fluke, so it's not like your lungworm or your stomachworm, where resistance or immunity is built up over, I suppose, a couple of years. You have to go in every year if there's an issue on your farm with liver fluke. Again, resistance is becoming a problem, especially with the products such as your Fastinex and your Tribex. It seems to be it has been an issue with sheep, but it seems to be becoming an issue with cattle as well. Again, if you're treating these animals while in a shed and they're not going back out onto grass, there will be no issue with this product because the resistance of the product, because you're not reinfecting the pastures, and the resistance won't build up because they're in the shed. So you're still okay to use them in a shed. I suppose here there's a table here showing the different products and when to use them. Concentrate on what's highlighted in red. If you want to go in and treat your animals after being housed 2 weeks, the products you use is your Indifluke, your Fastinex and your Tribex. It covers all stages of fluke. If you want to use your Closamectin or your Fluke IV or your Teagasc, you're looking at leave it for about 7 to 8 weeks after housing and go in and treat them then, and you're covering your immature fluke and your adult fluke. Then just the products just cover adult fluke alone is your Albex, your Indispex, Bimectin, Plus, Ivermectin Super, your Levifast, Diamond, your Xanil. But it's a long time, I suppose, to leave stock, 10 to 12 weeks in a shed before you treat them for fluke. Because if you have animals coming in, especially in a wet bag end, and they have a high burden of fluke already coming into the shed, if you leave them for that long to treat them, there could be a lot of damage done to your liver, and some of it might be irreversible. So I suppose if you're using them products, it might be recommended to come in, treat them maybe 2 or 3 weeks when in the shed, and then come back in then at a later stage, maybe 8 or 9 weeks later, and you'll cover all the stages of fluke then. Just to be conscious of the withdrawal periods in using these products as well, especially if you're finishing livestock for the factory. Another one, I suppose, we're hearing more about is your ruminant fluke. It's now become present on many farms. It's really more of a problem in the last number of years, the last 10 years. Look at before that, there wasn't much talk of ruminant fluke on farms. When it comes to ruminant fluke, your adult ruminant fluke don't cause any harm to the animal. It's your immature ruminant fluke that cause the issue. They basically latch onto the intestinal wall, and if you get high numbers of them burn into the wall, it can cause dehydration in the animal. In some cases, it can lead to the death of that animal. So it's the immature ruminant fluke you're trying to treat, I suppose, killing this with when using the products mentioned below. There's only 2 products which is known to control your ruminant fluke, and they are your Xanil and Levifast Diamond. They're the same active ingredient, which is called oxyclosanide. I suppose, again, talking to vets about this, the recommendation is you only use these products when treating from ruminant fluke and when you know you have a problem with ruminant fluke. Sometimes talking to farmers, it seems to be a certain amount of Levifast Diamond used out there, which can be used as a wormer and also for treating adult fluke. But there are other products out there which can be used for that. And again, going on veterinary advice, they would always say that only use these products when just treating ruminant fluke. And only treat it, look at, if you've treated them for your Stomachworm, Lungworm, and you treat them for your liver fluke, and the animal still is not thriving, then at that stage, come in, treat on, let's say, with your Xanil or your Levifast Diamond for your ruminant fluke. And don't treat the whole herd, treat it on a one-by-one basis of the animals that you think that need to get a treatment if they're not thriving. So look, if you keep using these products the way they've been used, resistance will become a problem, and then there is no other product out there that can be used to treat ruminant fluke. So be careful on the use of these. Then you have your lice. There's 2 types occurring in cattle. You have your biting lice, which feed on skin and hair, and you have your sucking lice, which burrow into the skin and feed on the blood. Usually get heavy infestations around the housing time, where you get a decrease in environmental temperatures, but cattle been housed in, I suppose you can get humid conditions, cattle start to sweat, and you'll get a huge increase in the number of lice and mange in the cattle. Good thing about, I suppose, treating these ectoparasites is it's not that hard to kill them, and they can only survive off the hose for more than a few days. Look, there's no immunity to these ectoparasites. It's a sort of a yearly thing. When once been housed, you have to go in and treat them. The life cycle lasts 2 to 3 weeks. So if you use a product that is persistent for greater than 3 weeks, usually you only need one treatment. You get the adults and you get the eggs after hatching out. Look, when treating, make sure you have all your animals housed. Don't reintroduce any new animals after that, because lice will jump from one animal to another. So have all animals housed at the time of treatment. And if there's an issue later on again during the winter, come back in with another treatment if needed. When you're treating lice and mange, look, you can use your porons like your spot on, your ectospec, your indospec, your ivermectin porons. You can use your injectables, but they're only examples of ivermectins, but they're only effective against your sucking lice. They're no use against your biting lice. And the third way to go in and treat these, you can use a spray called tactic spray, and use your knapsack sprayer when applying this. I suppose when you looking at why would you go to the cost of doing this treatment, what is to be got out of it? So look, the here a slide on your health versus your performance. To throw it an overall cost here of €6 for your parasite control for all the treatments you already mentioned. So versus if you didn't treat them, you'll have a loss of 0.1 kilo per day in your animal over 140 days, which amounts to a weight loss of 14 kilos. If you put that at a price of 180 per kilo, that's a loss in the value of that animal of €25 versus a cost of the treatment for 6. So look, it does pay to have your animals properly covered for all the parasites mentioned when being housed over the winter time, because you want to get the best performance possible out of the animals, give them the best chance to perform over the winter. So look, that's all I have to say on that. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you picked up something out of that. Thank you. If you have any questions again, you can go back at the end and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you. Back to you, Seán.
Thank you very much, Shane, for that presentation. So look, I'm just going to share my screen there. Okay, so look, I hope you can all see that there. So look at the Department of Agriculture last Thursday announced that they were rolling over a number of different schemes. The GLAS is one, the BDGP is another, and also the organic schemes. So these are, so GLAS and the BDGP are the ones which are most important and financially very important to farmers in this region. So look, I suppose, as regards GLAS, what does the extension of a 1-year contract mean? So look, at farmers who are in tranche 1 and tranche 2 are due to expire their contracts at the 31st of December 2020, and they are given now an opportunity to extend their contracts by 1 year. GLAS is not opened to new entrants. Okay, so how do you apply for this extension? Okay, so the Department of Agriculture have sent out letters to farmers, and they have also contacted farmers by text. A lot of farmers did receive that text today. So the purpose of the text is that farmers can reply to state whether they want to roll over for another year or if they don't wish to do so. So first of all, you can reply to that text with the DAFM space the letter Y. Okay, so that's if you wish to extend the contract by another year. If you don't wish to extend it, just reply DAFM the letter N. Also, farmers have an opportunity to extend their contract via the ag food system, and they can do that themselves, or they can ask their advisor or consultant to do that for them. The deadline for submitting online is the 31st of December, and farmers who have received the text have 3 days to respond to that text. If you don't respond within the 3 days, your only option then is to respond through ag food. Okay, so if you didn't receive any information, or if you didn't receive the letter, or you didn't receive the text, why would that be? It's possible that maybe you are in GLAS 3, and for that reason you have another year in GLAS, and you won't have received any communications from the department, so that would be the reason why. Maybe your farm is in the process of being transferred, maybe there's a change in the name of the herd number, maybe you're going into a partnership, maybe the GLAS applicant is deceased and there's a new registration going to happen. So that's I suppose a process that's taken place, and you may not have received a letter. In the case that you haven't received any letter, you will need to make contact with the GLAS section in Johnstown Castle, and by emailing them and letting them know that you do need to, you would like to roll over your GLAS application for another year. And another reason, look, if you didn't get a text, if you're not one of the two above reasons and you still didn't get a text, well, it could be that you are in a partnership. Farmers who are in partnerships will not receive a text, and they must reapply through the ag food route. Also, some farmers may have opted out of receiving texts, and if you have done that in the past, you will not receive the text. Also, it depends, I suppose, on your phone service provider. Some farmers may not be able to receive text, may not be able to reply to text. So in that case, your only route to apply for the rollover is through the online system, through ag food. Okay, a lot of people are asking, can you drop an action? Well, the answer to that is no. Okay, now there is one exception. In general, no. You have to roll over your GLAS and in its entirety. So you have to maintain and continue with all the actions that you had been completing up to this. Okay, the only one situation would be where you have lost land that you would have had on a lease, and that lease has now expired, and you no longer have that land in 2021. If you have any options or tasks on that, you no longer need to continue those tasks, and you'll be paid on the remaining tasks that you are continuing on the remainder of your farm. And you cannot take up any additional actions, or you cannot relocate any actions between fields or within your farm. Okay, so that's all on GLAS, and I'm sure there'll be some questions on that, and we'll get to them after. The next, I suppose, most important scheme to farmers in this region is the BDGP 1. So it has been extended for 1 more year, and you can apply for that extension through the ag food system, and screens will be provided by that. They're not yet available to farmers, and the deadline for this is the 15th of January, so have a little bit more time to work on this. You will also be receiving a text similar, in a similar fashion to GLAS farmers. You will receive your text, and you have to respond to that text with the DAFMY if you wish to continue for another year, or DAFM in space N if you do not wish to continue for another year. So look, as I say, the deadline for this is the 15th of January, so we have a little bit of time to get BDGP rollover sorted. What commitments do you have to meet as regards BDGP? Well, you basically have to continue with all the options or tasks that was on offer to you in 2020. So you have to continue to have beef bred calves born on your farm. You must complete and submit your records, the survey forms regards calf docility, cow milkability, etc. You also need to continue to update your carbon navigator on a yearly basis. You need to submit your genomic tissue tags as you had been doing. And you also must continue to maintain the 50% female replacement strategy that you would have met in 2020. And also you need to meet the stock bull and the AI requirements for that scheme. There are a number of farmers who will be ineligible to apply, and these are farmers who did not meet the stock bull or the AI requirements in 2019. and also farmers who did not meet the 50% female replacement strategy in, in 2020. And just the final and third scheme that we're going to look at is the organic farming scheme. So there are a number of farmers in each county that this will apply to. Like GLAS, an extension has been rolled over for an additional year. Again, like in GLAS, where you lose land, you are not you can stay in the scheme. However, you will not be paid, and your payment will be reduced as a result of losing that lease ground. You cannot be paid on any additional land that you take in 2021. And also, you must have a valid organic license in place with your organic control body, and that needs to be renewed next year. Again, how to apply. Now, just remember, the deadline for this is the 31st of December. You need to apply via the text system, again, similar to GLAS and the BDGP, as we mentioned. So again, DAFM space Y if you want to roll over, and DAFM space N if you do not wish to roll over. And it's vital and very important that you just put that DAFM space Y in your text and nothing else. We also have an option of rolling over in organics by sending an email to the organic section in the department, and the email address is shown there. And also you have an option of rolling over by sending a letter by registered post to the department section in Johnstown Castle in Wexford. And again, remember, 31st of December is the deadline for that, and be aware that the post is taking a little bit longer nowadays than it used to. So look at, that's just the last slide there. So I just put up the deadlines for each of the schemes. So keep in mind, GLAS and the organic scheme is one that we need to get sorted out before the end of the year, and the BDGP deadline is the 15th of January. Okay. And I'm going to bring in Donal McCabe for the first time. Donal is working in the background, keeping an eye on all the questions coming through there. So we are at 10 to 8. So look, I suppose a bit less than 10 minutes to try and get through some questions there. So Donal, any questions coming through there that you just want to put to the panel?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Look, there's a good few questions after coming in, and thanks to everyone for their participation. Just to remind people, I suppose, that Q&A tab, like as you said, Sean, it's just at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to type a question, like what Sean said, your question will be visible to you only, but the rest of the audience won't be able to see your question. I'll just clump questions together the best that I can, just because we're limited, I suppose, in terms of the time we have left. And we'll try and cover everything maybe that was asked, or as much as possible anyway. So just, I suppose I'll start maybe with James. Just in a couple of questions here on the beam, James. There's a question here. If it's a case that you get caught up with TB, so there's a problem with TB on the farm, can you get relief from the 5% reduction?
Yeah, the department have come back to us and they said there is going to be relief there, but they haven't specified the conditions of it yet. But there is going to be relief for farmers that are affected with TB. Okay.
Another one here as well, the calculator that you put up, James. I suppose it's just maybe a comments on, is there limitations to the calculator, like, in terms of when you're entering the monthly figure, is that the figure at the end of the month or start of the month, or?
Well, this is the thing with the calculator. The calculator will only be as good, Donal, as the information that's gone into it. So the more accurate a farmer can be, the better the calculator is going to be. Obviously, we have said there on the start of the slides that the department are calculating this on a daily basis. Whereas if you look at our calculator there, we're doing it on a monthly basis. But obviously we can tweak the calculator on an individual basis. Like, there's no one answer fits all here for farmers with this beam here. We'll have to look at each individual case, but to answer the question is, the calculator is only going to be as good as the information and the accuracy that's put into it. Like, there is a big difference. If a farmer sells cattle on the 5th of June, there's a big difference between him selling them on the 5th of June and selling them on the 25th of June. There's 20 days of a difference there. And if he sells 20 cattle and there's 20 days of a difference, it's a big difference. But on an individual basis, when we're talking to the farmer in relation to these cases, you can tweak the figures to accommodate that change.
Okay. Just a question here, I suppose, just a quick clarification in, are the cuts divided per month? So example, 1,105 kilos produced from July to October. Is that divided by 4? Does that have to be 5% less than last year? So
no. The 1,105 kilos of in on that example was what was produced already in the first 4 months of the year so far. Now, the cut is based on 12 months. It's not broken up into any particular month. Like, the easiest way of saying that is a lad might have to, you know, if you had no cattle for the last 3 months, you could have your quota filled in the first 9 months. The point I'm making is it's over the 12 months. It's over the 12 months. It's not on an individual month basis.
Okay. Okay, Shane, I would just move over to you now. In regards to, there's a question here, how long would you recommend to wait after dosing to move on to clean pasture? So when you're dosing for worms, you mentioned just maybe not putting them on to clean pasture straight away. Is there any kind of period in terms of that you should wait before you put them on to clean pasture?
I suppose, Donald, look, it's a new way of thinking. Before, we'd always talked about you put the bag onto clean pasture straight away. But they found by doing that, the resistance worms then were, I suppose, building up in the clean pastures, and there's no competition from the more susceptible. So going back to this route then of putting them back in your, I suppose, your old pasture, where you get a dilution effect of basically reducing them resistant to worms. I'd say you're looking at anything from 24 to 48 hours, Donald, but I would look at, I'm not a vet. I suppose a lot of the research I've done there is from Animal Health Ireland and from talking to vets. So I would suggest get veterinary advice on it, but look at, go and generally I'd say 24 to 48 hours should suffice.
Okay. There's a question here about builder's lime for lice and animals. You'd hear some farmers that would be controlling lice with lime. Have you any thoughts on that?
I have a client of mine, actually, with a discussion group meeting last week, and he was a guy that was using the lime down the back. But what he was doing, he was shaving the bags first, and he found by doing that he was getting a far better kill by using it that way. So look at. Yeah, seems to work. That's coming from guys who have used it.
Okay. Another question here. Is there one dose that is adequate for control of most or all of the parasites at housing?
Look, there's a few different combination products out there. Generally, again, from talking to vets, they wouldn't generally recommend them because I suppose going back to that issue of resistance building up, maybe they've been used in cases where they're not needed. But where it's something you want to treat all, the one that comes closest to mind will be your Tlasmectin. Now, Tlasmectin will cover all of your worms, your lungworm and all your stomach worms. It will also control your adult fluke and your immature fluke. So look, you'd want to have them housed, as shown in the slide there, you want to have them housed about 6 or 7 weeks for to cover all the fluke you want to cover. And it will definitely cover all your worms, lungworms. It will cover your, you'll cover your lice, it'll cover your sucking lice, but it won't cover the biting lice because it's an inject. Well, if you use the Poron, that scenario, you'll cover all your lice as well. So okay. The only thing it probably won't cover is your ruminant fluke if that's an issue.
Okay.
But you have to get your timing right. That's the key.
That's fine. Thanks, Shane. Seán, just a couple of quick questions just for yourself in regards to the scheme rollovers. There's a question here. If I do nothing, read GLAS, am I deemed to be finished in the scheme? So if there's no reply made at all in any form?
If there's no reply made at all, the department will assume that you have opted out. So, you know, it's up to you to make the effort to respond to the text with the AFM space Y or submit it online. So, yeah.
Okay. And last 3 participants, just to clarify, do they need to do anything at this stage?
Last 3 participants, no. They have another year to run, and so they just stay as they are for now.
Okay. Just one question as well. If an inspector, if a farmer chooses to stay in GLAS, an inspector visits the farm next year and finds, let's say, a problem with a coppiced hedge and says that it's not eligible for payment, in regards to clawbacks, will the clawback be only for that particular year, so in other words 2021, or can the clawback be from the start of the plan, or is there any clarification on that?
Yeah, they've clarified that the clawback, if you decide to roll over and you're into next year and you get an inspection, the clawback will be on the full term, not just for next year, but the full term of the GLAS contract. Okay,
and just again, I'm just conscious of time here, but just 1 or 2 more very quick questions. There's an answer or a question here in regards to beam, James. Sheep, are they accounted for beam?
No, sheep don't come into the calculations at all. It's purely based on cattle numbers, and as I said, an important point there: exporting slurry will not bring a farmer under it, or taking additional land won't bring a farmer under it, and sheep aren't taken into the calculations.
Okay, and just one last one here. Can I sell my 5-star 1 to 2 year old animals? So that'd be for you again, Seán. That'd be in regard to BDGP.
Yeah, look, you still need to have the 50% requirement. You know, the requirement that you had to meet this year, you have to maintain that. So look, you can sell them, but you'd need to be replacing them again with the genomically tested 4 or 5-star heifers or cows. So that 50% figure, you have to maintain it.
Okay, I'll hand back to you with that, Seán.
Okay, yeah, look, I suppose we have got through a lot of questions there. So I just seen a question there on the BEEP scheme, and just someone mentioned that there's no talk of that, but that it was mentioned in the budget, and you know we'd be expecting next spring that will be rolled over again, and that's quite a good scheme. So, that's the BBS, so I hope that will be rolled over again in the springtime. Okay, I think we have covered a lot of questions there. We've just gone over the hour mark, and I want to thank all the speakers this evening, and thanks, look, I suppose to everybody for getting this webinar up and running. It's the first we have done in this region. A lot of people there in the background and helped out, and especially admin and other advisors who helped to promote it and put this evening together. And also Michelle Laval in Mayo, who was involved with Connected and getting that webinar up and running. So look, I just want to thank the lads again for your presentations, and I hope it clarified a lot of issues for our farmers out there. We have our contact details and that on display, as you can see. So you can follow us on social media. Our email address is there, and the phone numbers for each of the relevant offices. We'll be holding more webinars in the new year. The next one is on the 12th of January. It's our sheep webinar. And once you've registered for this meeting, you will be also registered for those meetings as well, and you can use the same link to join those meetings. So this meeting, as I say, is recorded, and hopefully we'll have it up online on our YouTube channel. As Teagasc Roscommon Longford YouTube channel, we'll have it up there. We'll have links on social media so you can look over this presentation in the future. So want to thank you all, and happy Christmas, and have a safe Christmas to all the audience out there, and stay healthy. Bye.
Bye-bye,
thanks.
Bye. Thanks. Thank you.